And today we have with us a very passionate and young and dynamic social entrepreneur. He was in military. He navigated from focusing on engineering and finance. He navigated from there to becoming the lead for sustainability, circular economy at a major e-commerce firm. And now he is an entrepreneur and he's working to save the planet. Let us all learn from Christian Carron, the founder of Scope 3 Embodied Carbon, the most complex thing, Scope 3. What is he doing about it? So, hi, Christian. Welcome on our show today.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
So, you've been passionate about the environment since your graduation days, though. What key lessons have you learned along the way, and how do you implement them in your personal and professional life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think it starts at the core of wanting to do hard things. And so you can find areas that are generally untapped within your field and find the things that aren't being done. And so in my case, after leaving the military, I had a service obligation after graduation. Was working at a major e-commerce firm in the sustainability space, and looked at the data of where are the emissions in our footprint, and I saw that scope 3 just absolutely dominated the space and was mostly under discussed. It wasn't represented in the proportion that the ESG for our report was showing. So I I knew, with it being an especially difficult thing to measure and focus on, and with it being underrepresented, I'm like, this is the area that I want to focus in. I think I can make a difference here. And I think that kind of underscores the core of the efforts and focus that I've been in over the past decade. Is like, try the hard things, find the areas that are not getting the attention that they deserve, and create and or build solutions that help drive a path to green to an area that doesn't necessarily have a solution at that point.
Yeah, we are all struggling with the no solution of scope 3. I agree with you. Lots to be done in that aspect. Now, as a former head of sustainability at a leading e-commerce company, what key initiatives, according to you, should e-commerce platforms prioritize to move meaningfully or integrate sustainability and ESG practices in their business?
Yeah, I that's another great question. I think a lot of e-commerce businesses use ESG in a multi-pronged approach, but part of that prong is they have a customer that they're in effect selling their sustainability efforts to. And the customers identify and relate to sustainability in the way that they engage with the company. And so that, in my experience, came in the form of packaging and solar and electricity and wind, all of these big areas that directly impact the customer can see and understand. What's especially interesting about embodied carbon is that it's not discussed much at all with the consumer. The consumer typically absorbs and engages with sustainability content almost like a newsletter, rather than looking at the data behind where the emissions exist. And in the company that I worked for, embodied carbon covered about 70% of our overall emissions. And I would say in most companies, embodied carbon does cover probably around 60 to 80% of the emissions in the overall ESG or annual sustainability report. So um, the the areas that, especially in my time serving in a leadership position in sustainability, that I was really excited about exploring and then building solutions for was in the life cycle assessment space. Um, it is nearly impossible to create customized abatement and reduction strategies and plans if you don't have an indication of where in a value chain the emissions exist. So for those of you who might not know, an LCA is a life cycle assessment. It measures the scope 3 carbon in a production process of an item. So um, obviously there's like the three scopes of carbon. Scope 1 being the direct emissions. It directly emits emissions into the air. Think about your car and the combustion, and an exhaust emits carbon to the air. There's scope 2, which is the indirect carbon, which, imagine like your light bulbs in your house. That's obviously, the light bulb isn't directly emitting carbon from the light bulb, but it's tied to a power plant that's offsite, indirectly emitting carbon into the atmosphere. The scope 3 carbon relates to products that don't have combustion and don't have batteries or electrical power. It's the manufacturing process through that product's life cycle, from the material extraction to the manufacturing, the transportation to get it to the place that a consumer can buy it, and the transportation, and even going through the end of life of the product. And these life cycle assessments are scientific documents that measure across each phase and then sum each phase to say this product emitted this many kilograms of emissions into the atmosphere. And while at this e-commerce company, I managed a team building life cycle assessments, measuring across every life cycle stage. And we use those life cycle assessments as a means to engage with the suppliers and try to drive results on their end. And luckily, the pilots that my team ran were successful enough that we were able to get the suppliers for the products that we were purchasing from. The suppliers were signing decarbonization pledge that were legally binding and forward looking. So it's it's really exciting, kind of seeing the problem, then identifying a means of measurement, abatement strategy, and then implementing that abatement strategy within the supply chain, the suppliers that produce that product, whether that be changing the materials being used to either be recycled material, or redesigning the item, or changing the area of manufacturing for that product. There's a lot of different opportunities, but every supply chain is different for every different product. And so you need to have a created report specific to each product to identify where in that unique item's value chain the opportunities for reduction from the emissions side exist.
I see. That's very interesting. And yeah, LCA is a big topic these days.
Yeah.
It's a big topic, and it's a huge task because when you talk about the e-commerce platform, the vendors are all over the world. Well, moving from there, many of our students are curious about carbon markets and their feasibility. As a founder of Embodied Carbon Solutions, could you share the perspectives on carbon market, especially in the international markets? How do you trade? How does it actually, what is the life cycle? How do you get the carbon credits? How do you trade? So if you could enlighten all of us a little bit more on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Carbon markets are a really big topic right now for a number of reasons. One, companies are getting to a point where either with PCFs or EPDs or like third party LCAs, they have uh, a number, like kilograms of carbon. Hey, we estimate this footprint that we're exuding into the world to be this much. How do we fix that? And a lot of companies are beginning to look into the purchasing of carbon credits. And so the market is predominantly evolving at a pretty rapid rate. And in tandem with that, there's a really unique situation where there's um, non-ethical carbon credits that are flooding the market because the various individuals see opportunity for a quick dime and can create something in the lacking of regulations space to try to make money very quickly. And so yeah, carbon markets and the purchasing of carbon credits comes at the very, very end of the process that my team managed, where um, first is the measurement, then the reduction opportunities. And then once you get a product adjusted in terms of all the abatement actions that you can take, only when the actions that you take don't have a significant, meaningful reduction is when you can start evaluating the purchase of carbon credits. The carbon market is rapidly, rapidly evolving. It changes on a very, very frequent basis, and the ethical purchasing of carbon credits is uh, it's a skill, to be honest, and it takes scientists and those who are really educated in the space to know exactly what to look for. I would say the most important thing about the carbon credit market and the carbon markets in terms of selling offsets is that the claimed reduction is validated by a third party and that it is a reduction that otherwise would not have organically happened. What I mean by that is there are, even in the Midwest right now, I know a few colleagues who uh, they have engaged with farmers who obviously their business is about growing crops, but there is natural carbon absorption through photosynthesis in their plants growing. There are there are businesses trying to sell carbon credits for actions that are already happening right now. And so the farmers are being sold on this idea of, hey, we can validate that your crops are absorbing X kilograms of carbon or X metric tons of carbon. And so you can sell carbon credits and make even more money. The the ethicalness of selling a offset that would already be doing that in the first place. That there's a similar market for going to landowners of forests and selling credits for having them quote unquote not cut down their forests. Well, the farmers wouldn't be cutting down their forests in the first place, so there isn't a meaningful delta to actually measure against. And so, to that point, the carbon markets can be an incredible opportunity in terms of finding offsets that are actually removing carbon from the environment that would not have been removed otherwise. And it's also fraught with a number of organizations who are selling what I would consider non-ethical offsets that aren't actually removing offsets from the environment. They're just measuring absorption and then selling that as a means. And so I would say my favorite offset, I'd say there's probably two favorite offsets. I've been a fan of DAC, so direct carbon capture for years. It's it's a huge plant that sucks in regular air from our atmosphere and has filters to take carbon dioxide from the air and turn it into solid state again, and they go and they bury the solid state carbon and sell those as credits. And in in my opinion, DAC, yeah, direct air capture, is quite literally removing carbon from the atmosphere. Other other offsets that I find really interesting is the reforestation efforts. And there's a lot of checks and balances with reforestation efforts as well. But those two types of offsets I've seen in my experience to be the most ethical, and with direct air carbon capture being my favorite for sure.
That sounds interesting. And according to you, the third party audits which many players do, which one are the most genuine according to you? Which is your favorite there?
Oh my goodness. I'll I'll say I'll say this. The the field is evolving so fast that I've seen the rise and fall of auditing agencies even in the course of 2 years. And what I would recommend is Googling and doing research as to what are the auditing agencies, the third party auditing agencies that are most respected in terms of um, purchasing carbon credits and validating the ethicalness of the carbon credits. Because what I might say is my top three, maybe one or two of those in 2 years has change of leadership and changes their values. And so um, I'll I'll say doing doing meaningful research on the topic is always probably going to be the right approach until this rapidly evolving field becomes a little bit more consistent in the next decade or 2 decades.
So that doesn't gives my answer still.
That is correct. Yeah, I'll leave that open still.
Now, with the current geopolitical developments which are going on across the world, how do you foresee environmental initiatives being impacted, particularly where you are in the US?
Particularly where I am in the US, I've seen firsthand a lot of initiatives and efforts begin to take a back seat. I think, yeah, the geopolitical climate definitely plays a role, um, and legislation plays a really strong role as well. You can see in the EU where like the CSRD pulls in pretty significant requirements, reporting requirements for sustainability on on a regular enough basis where it's not something that large companies can ignore. The legislation and political climate in the US um, changes rapidly enough, and there hasn't been enough standardization in the space that um, it can be a roller coaster at points. There is a lot of hope I have in the U.S. though, especially with the climate pledges that some of the large companies have signed on to. So my favorite climate pledge is it's called the Climate Pledge. Has over 400 corporate signatories who all pledge to be net zero carbon by 2040. And this pledge is legally binding. And so it is in all good faith that these companies will be on path to have no carbon, which is reputationally and legally, regardless of the geopolitical climate, if companies make a pledge based off of the values that they find true to themselves, and with the climate pledge having 400 plus very large companies that are that are kind of in the pioneering space of what creative, inventive solutions can we bring to the table. Um, I see that as the consistency that, regardless of the roller coasters enacted by the geopolitical climate, the pledges tend to take a bit of precedence in terms of a remaining priority for some of these companies.
That is very encouraging.
Yeah.
Lastly, what message would you like to share with the future entrepreneurs and professionals entering the space of sustainability and climate change?
I would say focus on the connections that you have in the space and be open to new connections. Um, the sustainability community is small and it is filled with honestly genius people from all different backgrounds that have unique and creative ways to figure out how they're going to change the world, and connecting and learning from all different people from different backgrounds, I think is the the cornerstone that I lean on in terms of developing relationships, learning from other people, and yeah, I think that that would be the biggest message I would share is remain connected and make friends in the space because we all care about the same thing.
Great. Do you have any operations in Southeast Asia?
I do not currently have operations in Southeast Asia. I have partners in the LCA space that I've been in discussion with right now. There's a company who creates PCFs using AI, and they're based in southern part of India. I've been in discussion with them and um, kind of went through a product demo and gave some recommendations and discussed opportunities for them. So I have connections in uh, the yeah in Asia, but other than that, no, just friends.
Well, we are here. So in case you want
Absolutely.
any collaborations, we would be happy to partner and have exchange of knowledge and energy.
Absolutely. Totally open to that and looking forward to next steps with you.
Thank you so very much. It has been a pleasure talking to you. And we wish you all the best in this endeavor and happy to explore collaborations as well. And